In the frozen streets of Hostomel, a convoy of elite Chechen fighters rolled toward Kyiv. Engines growled low. Headlights cut through smoke and snow. This was supposed to be a victory parade. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were Kadyrov's most feared killers. Men shaped by years of brutal urban warfare, battle-hardened, ruthless, conditioned to inspire terror before firing a single shot. They believed the capital would fall in days. They believed Ukraine would break. They never made it. What happened next was wiped from official reports. No press briefings, no casualty numbers, no public funerals. But inside Russian military circles, the truth spread fast. Whispered, remembered, feared, and it left a scar. This is the story of Ukraine's Alpha Group, the operators who don't exist until they do. March 3, 1990. Kyiv. The Soviet Union still stood, but it was already cracking from within. Republics were restless. Power was slipping. Control was no longer guaranteed. Inside the KGB, planners understood something dangerous was coming. When empires fall, violence follows. So a secret order was issued. Establish the 10th group of KGB Alpha in Ukraine. This unit wasn't meant for parade grounds or front lines. It was designed for chaos, hostage crises, terrorism, internal collapse. 120 of the KGB's finest operators volunteered, men with combat experience, intelligence backgrounds, psychological resilience. Then came selection, not a test of strength, but endurance, sleep deprivation, isolation, stress drills designed to break identity itself, live fire exercises where hesitation meant failure. Only 15 survived. Those who remained weren't just soldiers anymore. They were precision instruments. They trained in the shadows, masters of close-quarters combat where fights ended in seconds, expert snipers trained to wait hours for a single shot. Hostage rescue specialists drilled to move faster than panic, counter-terror operators with one guiding principle: protect the people, eliminate the threat. No mistakes. The choice, 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed almost overnight. Command structures dissolved, loyalties fractured. Across former republics, Alpha units either returned to Moscow, disbanded, or were absorbed by new regimes. Ukraine's Alpha faced a moment that would define everything: serve Moscow, the force that trained them, or serve Ukraine, a state still finding its feet, with no guarantees. This choice wasn't symbolic. It meant risk, uncertainty, possible abandonment. They chose Ukraine. In that moment, they stopped being Soviet assets and became something far more dangerous: elite operators with Soviet training and Ukrainian loyalty. 1994. Ukraine's Alpha was officially reborn under the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU. Same operators, same doctrine, a new flag. They no longer worked for an empire. They worked for stability. For the next 2 decades, Alpha operated almost entirely out of public view. No headlines, no interviews, no recognition. Their missions stacked quietly in classified files, weapons seizures before they reached criminal networks, organized crime takedowns in post-Soviet chaos, narcotics operations tied to international trafficking, high-risk hostage rescues completed before the media arrived. Over 7,000 missions. Not luck, not coincidence. Discipline. Alpha didn't chase glory. They ended threats before chaos could spread. They became invisible guardians of a fragile state until history caught up with them. IRAQ 2003. The world watched Baghdad burn. American armor thundered through the desert. CNN ran 24-hour coverage of shock and awe. History, it seemed, belonged to the United States. But while the cameras followed American divisions, Ukraine quietly deployed its best. No announcements, no headlines, no flags on television. Alpha was sent into one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. Their mission wasn't conquest, it wasn't glory, it was survival. Baghdad. The Ukrainian embassy in Baghdad quickly became a high-value target. Foreign diplomats were being hunted. Kidnappings happened in broad daylight. Mortar attacks were routine. Insurgents didn't need intelligence agencies. They had something simpler: time, numbers, and a city drowning in chaos. Alpha operators fortified the embassy compound like a fortress, but concrete walls weren't enough. They ran constant external patrols, route clearance drills, counter-surveillance operations. They identified threats before they became attacks, and when contact happened, it ended quickly. Other embassies relied on private contractors. Alpha relied on discipline, coordination, and silence. They didn't just hold the perimeter, they dominated the battle space around it. Months passed. Attacks intensified across Baghdad. But not there. When Ukraine's diplomatic mission finally rotated home, every single person returned alive. In Iraq, that wasn't normal, that was Alpha. The Betrayal and Rebirth 2014. Euromaidan, Kyiv, erupted. What began as protests became revolution. Barricades burned, snipers appeared. The state itself trembled, and suddenly Alpha found itself under fire, not from enemies abroad, but from its own people. Accusations spread like wildfire, claims that Alpha operators had fired on protesters, that the unit had been used as a political weapon. Some accusations were false, some were never proven. But in revolution, perception is everything. The damage was done. The purge Ukraine's Alpha was torn apart. Commanders were removed, operators interrogated. The unit was purged, reorganized, rebuilt. For the first time in its history, Alpha fractured. Some operators stayed loyal to Ukraine. Others made a different choice. They didn't defect loudly. They disappeared quietly. The defector. One name would haunt Alpha for years. Alexander Khodorkovsky, former Alpha commander. Highly trained, highly connected. He defected, not just to Russia, but to the Russian-backed separatist movement in Donbas. Khodorkovsky became the leader of the Vostok Battalion, one of the most capable and dangerous separatist formations. He knew Alpha's tactics, their mindset, their weaknesses. Brothers would now face brothers. War in Donbas. April 2014. Horlivka. The war in eastern Ukraine began quietly. No declarations, no front lines. Just checkpoints, kidnappings, and disappearances. 3 Alpha operators were captured by separatist forces. They were beaten, humiliated, paraded on Russian television like trophies. Moscow called it a victory, proof that Ukraine's elite could be broken. They were wrong. The shadow war Alpha doesn't forget. For the next 8 years, Alpha fought a war most Ukrainians never saw. No uniforms, no insignia, no recognition. They hunted fifth columnists embedded inside Ukrainian cities, captured Russian intelligence officers operating without insignia, disrupted sabotage networks targeting infrastructure. Every mission carried risk. There were no ceasefires in the shadows. By 2018, Alpha lost 10 operators, the first casualties in the unit's history. Each death cut deep. These weren't rookies, they were veterans, men who had survived thousands of missions, only to fall defending their homeland. February 24, 2022. At 4 a.m., the illusion shattered. Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Missiles fell, airfields burned, columns of armor crossed the border. The Kremlin believed the war would be over in 72 hours. Their plan was simple. Spetsnaz would seize Hostomel airport, airborne troops would pour into Kyiv, Kadyrov's Chechen fighters would terrorize the capital, Ukraine's leadership would flee or die decapitation. Shock, collapse. But Russia forgot something. Alpha was waiting while Russian columns advanced. Alpha mobilized, no speeches, no ceremonies, just orders. They knew the terrain, they knew the enemy, and they knew this moment had been coming for years. The ambush northern Kyiv. Hostomel, night. Snow mixed with smoke. A convoy rolled forward. Chechen paramilitaries, the Kadyrovsi, feared across Chechnya for their brutality, infamous for their propaganda videos, confident, loud, reckless. They believed Kyiv was already lost. Their orders were clear: hunt Ukraine's president, break civilian morale, send a message. They never reached the city. Contact Alpha operators were already in position. They let the convoy move deep, into kill zones, into darkness. Then the silence broke. Precision fire. Coordinated strikes, targets dropped before they understood what was happening. Vehicles burned, communications died. There were no survivors. Aftermath Russian channels went quiet. No footage, no statements. Kadyrov stopped posting on Telegram. The men who were supposed to terrorize Kyiv had vanished. Erased by operators who don't exist. Battle of Kharkiv. While the world fixated on Kyiv, on convoys burning outside the capital and speeches broadcast from bunkers, another battle was unfolding to the east. Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, its industrial backbone, its scientific heart. If Kharkiv fell, Ukraine would bleed. Russia knew this, and so did Alpha. The fight for the city. From the first days of the invasion, Kharkiv came under relentless assault. Artillery pounded residential districts, rockets struck apartment blocks, armor pushed toward the outskirts. Alpha operators embedded themselves inside the city, not as spectators, not as advisors, as hunters. This wasn't open field warfare, this was urban hell. Close quarters combat inside shattered buildings, sniper duels across streets measured in meters. Night raids through stairwells filled with dust and smoke. Every block became a battlefield. Every window a potential firing point. Alpha adapted. They moved in small, autonomous teams. They disrupted Russian command nodes. They targeted officers, forward observers, and supply elements. Russia pushed. Alpha pushed back harder. Bleeding, the invader Kharkiv did not fall. Week after week, Russian units rotated in and came out depleted. Morale collapsed. Casualties mounted. Momentum died. Alpha didn't just defend the city, they bled the Russian army dry, and they were only getting started. The counteroffensive, September 2022. Kharkiv Oblast. While Russian state media celebrated the success of their so-called special military operation, Ukraine prepared something very different, a hammer blow, and Alpha stood at its edge. The strike, the counteroffensive, came fast. Faster than Russia expected, faster than Russia could react. Alpha operators moved ahead of conventional units, marking targets, seizing crossings, disrupting retreat routes. Russian defensive lines, declared impregnable, collapsed in days. Not weeks, days. Equipment was abandoned intact. Vehicles left running. Units fled without orders. Kupiansk fell, then Izium, then settlement after settlement. What Russia had spent months occupying was lost in hours. The message Alpha posted a single photo. Operators standing in liberated Kupiansk. Weapons lowered, faces hidden. One line of text, which was and always will be Ukrainian. No hashtags, no explanation. Mic drop. The mission continues. The war did not end, and neither did Alpha's work. Today, Ukraine's Alpha Group operates where cameras never go, deep behind enemy lines. Inside occupied territory, in places that officially don't exist. They hunt collaborators. Identify and eliminate Russian commanders. Extract civilians trapped behind the front. They gather intelligence that shapes entire offensives. Their tools reflect the modern battlefield. SIG MCX rifles, Desert Tech precision sniper systems, Brugger and Thomet submachine guns, Western technology. Ukrainian resolve, but weapons alone don't define Alpha. Discipline does. Patience does. Purpose does. The operators. Who are these men? You will never know their names. Their faces are blurred, their families protected. Their lives compartmentalized. They don't seek fame. What? They don't give interviews. They are fathers who kiss their children goodbye without explanation. Brothers who carry the weight of silence. Sons who chose a life where recognition is forbidden. They stand between tyranny and freedom and ask for nothing in return. When Russia sends its best, Alpha is ready. When terrorists take hostages, Alpha responds. When Ukraine needs its deadliest weapon, Alpha deploys. The legacy. From 15 survivors in 1990 to Ukraine's premier Tier 1 Special Forces unit, Alpha Group has evolved from Soviet shadows into Ukrainian legends. They've fought in Iraq, in Donbas, in Kyiv, in Kharkiv. They've faced betrayal, loss, impossible odds, and they never quit. Because Alpha doesn't fight for medals, they don't fight for headlines. They fight for Ukraine. The final truth: Russia believed Ukraine would fall in 72 hours. They forgot about the operators in the shadows, the ones who erased the Kadyrovtsi, the ones who held Kharkiv, the ones who shattered the front in Kharkiv Oblast. Ukraine's Alpha Group, the ghosts who refuse to die, the warriors who never surrender, the operators who don't exist until they do. Slava Ukraini. Next episode, Israel's Sayeret Matkal, the unit that hunts where others fear to tread.